Hello and welcome to today's online discussion brought to you by DW Akademie and Reporter Without Borders. My name is Jaafar Abdul-Karim and I'm your host today. If you're a blogger, a journalist or a media activist, you may want to pay a close attention to our discussion today. It's all about your digital safety and how to avoid digital danger zones. You might be using a mobile phone, a computer or a camera. Yes, it makes your life easier, but did you think about digital surveillance or hacking attacks on it? And what are the risks and where is the threat? That's what we want to talk today about. And simply the question, is the data collecting on the internet being simply overrated? Join our panel to get the answers. I welcome to my left side Ala Al-Shehabi, a Bahraini writer and a pro-democracy activist who is one of the founding members of BahrainWatch.org. Hi, Ala.
Hi, Jaafar.
You're welcome. And onto my right side, I have Roth, and she is the editor at Tachtical Tech and also blogs on privacy, surveillance, and media.
Hello.
Welcome, Anne. And Christian Stöcker is author of Nerd Attack and head of the web tech and media desk at Spiegel Online.
Hi.
Hello. And Hauke Gierow is responsible for freedom of expression and information on the internet from Reporters Without Borders, Germany.
Hi.
So, welcome to my guest. I just want reminding, please, if you want to join our discussion, go to the hashtag DigiSave, send us your questions, and we're gonna enter it into our discussion. My first question, we hear a lot about digital safety the whole days and even the last weeks. What's the meaning of digital safety and how serious is it?
Well, digital safety is a term that describes securing your communication, any kind of communication that we have that happens online through email, the computer, and that transfers our data, public or private or working data. And I think specifically as we're addressing the topic of journalism, the protection of sources is something that plays a big role for journalist work and for journalist ethics, which I think most journalists will fight for. The privacy of their sources. And once the digital communication comes into play, it's very important to make sure that this is not accessible. And anything that covers making your data not accessible goes by the term of digital security.
All right. We have Ala. Ala, you had an own experience. You had an attack on your computer, right? Can you tell us more about what happened exactly?
Well, I was not very aware of what digital safety or security means initially, but last year in April, I received several consecutive, very strange emails in which there was an attachment, and they looked like they were from people I knew or other public figures. So I immediately, as receiving the emails, I tried to open this attachment, and some of them were very interesting, you know, telling me about secret negotiations with the Bahraini government, and I thought, wow, I'm very curious, let me try to open this email. Nothing would happen. I asked my friends, look, someone sent me something that looks very interesting, please open it for me. And they said to me, you've just sent us a virus. And then every 2 days I was getting a similar email, so I thought, someone's really desperate to try and get me to open this, who would it be? And so there was based on that specimen of the software that was attached in that email, there was a 2-month investigation, which digital security experts were examining the software. And after 2 months, they discovered that it was a very sophisticated form of spyware, which can record audio, sound. It can switch your cameras on. It can key logs everything that you write on your laptop.
And did you have the feeling like that someone is taking control over your laptop or someone is being able to control it? What happened exactly?
Well,
how did you feel? How did you see it?
Well, because of I was very astute and forwarded it on to people that were technical, they identified that this was spyware. So I immediately took precautions. But then we also discovered that many activists would not have even noticed the emails, would have opened it, wasn't even aware that there was a particular danger. And after this 2-month investigation, they discovered that it was software called FinSpy that's produced by a German-British company. And so, even though I was shocked that the Bahraini government was trying to target me with this, I was even more shocked that this was a British-German company that was manufacturing this spyware and selling it onto the government, which was then used to spy and hack into our computers in Bahrain.
Yeah. Is it the single case what's happening to Allah, Christian, or should really every journalist take the topic digital safety into consideration of his work?
Well, I think Allah and people who are sort of in her line of work and who are doing investigative work in difficult circumstances and deal with sometimes repressive regimes and so on, they are a particular focus, obviously. Mm-hmm. And they are much more in danger than someone who writes about, local news, for example, I think. So I think that there's some differentiation necessary as to how great the danger is for one specific journalist. At the same time, it's probably wise to at least familiarize yourself with the options you have to protect yourself digitally. Because even if you do local news, at some point you might come across something that will make someone else very angry that you wouldn't even have thought that you'd get into contact at any point in your career. So
every journalist should really take it very serious, or can you differentiate between like the high sensitive topics, yes, and the normal journalist who's talking about maybe local things, the way you said, or talking even about things that are not that dangerous. So,
I think it should be part of the training of journalists to know about this stuff.
Okay.
For starters, for every journalist, because you don't know where you're going to end up. Basically, you don't know which story you're going to come across. Mm-hmm. For day-to-day operations, many people can probably get away with a fairly low level of computer security, really. But as a general rule, it would be wise if everybody knew about it and knew what to do in the event he feels that this is necessary now.
Okay. And who do you think cares for this information? Because if I have nothing to hide and I can write my email, so what?
Well, I think there are a lot of people that are potentially interested. So not every information you have may be of a specific interest to somebody, but if we see now for the National Security Agency, they made a new definition of the word relevance, and basically everything is relevant to them now. And they just search on specific keywords, entire communications, to just pick out bits of information they deem interesting.
So they would care for the information journalists are doing just to maybe scare them or to make them afraid from continuing their work. So I would assume now that every one of you has an encrypted smartphone, has an encrypted mails, and you're very secure and very aware of what you're doing.
I think maybe a first step everybody should and can take is to think about what kind of technology they are using. To just be aware of the consequences specific technology has. There are many gadgets and there are many programs and many things that are nice to have, but it might not all be secure to use. So I think the first step is just to think, what do I need to do my job as a journalist? And the next step is, okay, what kind of technology can I use for that? And then you go to specific solutions and you say, okay, for me, encrypted email is an option, or for me, an encrypted phone is an option. Yeah. So I think that is the very basic step to take.
Ala, did you change your way of behaving and being online after being attacked? Are you using now encrypted mails and phones, and you're really aware of what's happening?
Yeah, I use a VPN when I'm in Bahrain, but I think just to make the idea, because it was very complicated. I used to be sent to digital security workshops. I used to get USBs with 50 different, sophisticated software, and I don't know where to start with all of this. Like where do I begin? This is for this. This is everything's very specific, and it's too complicated for someone, who's basically not a technical person. Mm-hmm. So my advice has always been to other activists and people on the ground, even who are doing stuff online, is you identify the risks first of all. What is the most dangerous risks? For me, it's always been that when I walk around with my phone in Bahrain or during a protest, this is a risk in itself, because if they see me with my phone, I instantly become a target. And when you're susceptible to arrest, the first thing you do is they will take your phone. and immediately this will be compromised. So the immediate risk for not just people in Bahrain, actually across the Arab world, like my friend Ala Abdul-Fattah, who was arrested 2 days ago, they immediately confiscated his laptop, immediately confiscated his phone, and when you're in their hands, they will use torture, they will use physical abuse to force you to compromise your passwords, and then that content of everything on your phone doesn't matter what encryption you use, they will immediately have access. So with my friend Ala Abdul-Fattah, for example, within 1 hour, Twitter accounts of his family relatives were hacked into straight away.
You mean Ala Abdul-Fattah, the Egyptian activist who was arrested 2 days ago?
Yes, yes.
Someone.
And there are countless other examples of people in Bahrain who they get arrested specifically to take control of websites, to take over Twitter accounts.
Yeah.
So that's the immediate risk. So I would say, for example, in that instance, under those circumstances, your plan B would be for a close friend or relative to have access to your accounts and immediately change the passwords instantly. When the news of your arrest has appeared, someone changed your password straight away.
Okay.
Because there have been cases where the security services try to then gain access. So I would say for me, that's the first kind of very serious risk. The second serious risk is hacking. And being sent they're much more sophisticated than when I received them a year ago. Just being online, they can get through they're embedded in the ISPs and they get delivered by identifying your IP address, and it's invisible. So you need to use encryption in that case, or a VPN.
If we take
the final, one more thing.
Go ahead.
Final. So the three really risks, from my experience in the region, that I would advise everyone to do. The third is the risk of surveillance.
Mm-hmm.
So knowing that all the networks that you use are being monitored, your phone, your internet usage. So therefore, just simply don't say anything. You assume that Big Brother's watching. Don't say anything that could get you in trouble, and that's just to do with your basic freedom of expression. And to what extent you want to restrict yourself, but realizing there is someone who's listening and talking. So we know, for example, a German company called Trovico has sophisticated technology which monitors all your SMS and taps into your phone.
Mm-hmm.
And there are examples of activists when they do get taken to a police station, a copy of all of their SMSs and phone calls are recorded using the software. So basically realize that your use and communications are being listened to, and be careful what you say.
Okay, you said four different steps. I would like to go to step one about encrypting. Like in case of Ala Abdul-Fattah, he was arrested, and they took his mobile phone and his laptop. How could he avoid that they really get access to his information on the laptop? Is it possible to have done something before getting arrested?
I think I agree with Ala very much on that the context of your situation really plays an important role. And in this case, if you're faced with a situation where you're possibly threatened with torture to give out your password, an encrypted phone really doesn't protect you very much. In that case, it's maybe important to realize that your phone cannot be kept secure in all ways. So the important thing in that case would be to not have the important phone numbers, to not have the important passwords, or to not run these accounts through the phone that is possibly going to be taken away from you. Of course, you don't know this ahead of time in most situations, but in that case, it's going to be very, very difficult, no matter what kind of encryption he uses, to keep that safe. And generally, for example, encryption can protect your communication very well, but if you live, so to say, under the radar and you're not being the target of anyone at all, if for all of a sudden you start using encryption with one person only, or let's say you're a local journalist and you're covering sports, and all of a sudden there's a new mail address appearing in your communication, and all of a sudden you're exchanging encrypted emails, but only with this one person, then it's very likely that there is an interesting story behind this. Very likely that this one person is really someone who the authorities would like to look into. And if they exchange encrypted emails, still the subject line will be unencrypted. So if the subject line says something that could be revealing important information plus the email address of that person, it's not going to be very difficult to find out who that is.
Right.
So encryption can be very helpful. But there's also situations where it's maybe not such a good idea to suddenly start using it in a certain way. You always need to think about the context in which you use a certain method. Maybe sometimes it can be very useful if you're already an endangered person to not look out for your privacy so much, but in the opposite, to be very, very public about what you do, because the only thing that can protect you is public attention.
Well, what would you do if you're working as Spiegel Online does, like working on a high sensible topic and high investigation? creative, then you can't do it public. So how do you protect yourself at Spiegel Online? Do you encrypt your emails while you're doing the whole investigation interviews?
Well, there's several things to this. If we come back to our story for a second, if you, in that situation, when you've got a sophisticated piece of spyware on your laptop, it doesn't matter if you encrypt your email, because it will be readable before you encrypt it, because you can't type encrypted text. It will be visible on your screen, and someone who takes a screenshot every half second will be able to read everything you type anyway before you hit the encrypt button. So in cases like this, it's very, very sensible to do stuff that is really, really sensitive on a machine, if you have to use a computer at all, on a machine that is completely denetted, that is air gapped and has no contact to the internet, and is ideally never gets into contact with any USB stick or whatever that's been anywhere else. That is the level of paranoia that you have to use. Then it's as terrible as it sounds. And the same goes for phones, as Anna said. If you are at risk of being compromised by an organization as powerful as a secret service, chances are that they have means of tapping into your computer as long as it's attached to the internet, and that can get you and your sources into great danger, because all the measures that go on top of what you do on your desktop will be no use then.
Okay.
That is, so it's the best advice is maximum paranoia, and having your phone not in the room when you talk to someone, and meeting in person, and maybe using stuff like ancient forms of communication, basically, that you can rely on.
Is that realistic?
It's not a question of it being realistic. It's a question of being safe or not being safe, as dismal as that sounds.
Okay.
But
okay.
Most journalists are not currently, I at least assume, are not currently actively being watched by the NSA. So at the moment, I operate under the assumption that my phone is bugged. But I don't operate under the assumption that everybody's phone in Germany is bugged, or everybody who writes sends an email to me is under constant surveillance on their own desktop. So it's as everyone said, it's always a question of sort of on a case by case, situation by situation basis, deciding how dangerous is this, and what do I have to do? What's the maximum level of protection that I can guarantee in this situation?
Okay. And you wanted to comment?
Right. I agree with what Christian says. I also don't think it is useful. Also, I think it doesn't enable you to work properly if you're constantly maximum paranoid and only write on paper and only talk to people in person. That way, journalism doesn't work that way these days. On the other hand, the idea that that only a few people are targeted by the Secret Service, I'm not saying I find that naive, but I find it at least a bit risky to say, because we never know who is targeted by the Secret Service. We recently had several cases of German journalists being targeted by German domestic Secret Service, which no one would have assumed that this is happening, and we are not a high-risk country that we're living in. And this is something that can happen all around the world, and you will not know about it before. Before we talked about who are the adversaries who we're talking about, and then we mentioned several authorities and secret services. At the same time, investigative journalists will often have companies, huge companies, at their adversaries. If you're doing investigative work, for example, on environment issues, you have huge companies who are very powerful, who probably have good relations to different governments, who will maybe even tell lies about you to engage Secret Service or police investigations against you that have nothing to do with the topic that you investigate, but somehow discredit you in a way that you get surveillance of a kind that you never thought of as your threat model. And so I think journalists need to be aware of these things.
There has been a great article by James Ball of The Guardian, I think, who wrote about what you can do to protect sources today. And one thing he said is that, of course, if a source contacts you, like makes the first contact, they can even flag up themselves by they send an email and it's recorded somewhere. And so there may be a situation, regardless what you do afterwards, where you are not able to keep somebody safe. It is just less important to keep this also in mind when you think about dead drops on websites that many newspapers use. You need to be really sure that these are really secure systems. And also he said that that a lot of things that has also been said, a lot of things you do to make the communication secure can really flag you up with certain actors. It is really hard to think about it.
Ala mentioned like the spy softwares that are being built in Europe or in America and then being transported like to Bahrain, as you already mentioned. Like you have the MSC's Blue Coat Gamma International hacking team, Trovicor. From Reporter Without Borders put them on the enemy of the internet. Okay, everyone, or according to Reporter Without Borders, they are the enemy of the internet. What does that mean? Like, what do you do then? How can you stop? Because Ala mentioned that they played an important role in attacking her account and attacking her privacy. So what are the steps that you usually take in this case concerning this spy softwares?
Well, this year we put these companies, and those are only 5 companies. There are a lot more companies, but those were 5 companies we thought to be very active and very aggressive. And we put them on this list because we wanted to spread. When thinking about internet freedom, you think about internet censorship as like the first threat to freedom of information online, and it's a very obvious one. But we wanted to go deeper and to go to the subject of surveillance of journalists around the world. And these companies play an increasing role. So the market is growing very much in the recent years. And I have to say I'm very ashamed that a lot of these companies come from Germany and also from other European states, and that this technology is exported, sometimes even with export credit guarantees, so with the direct help of German taxpayer money.
But on the other hand, these governments say they are protecting themselves. They want to know where are the bad guys in our country, and they are saying we have to take control of what's happening. So where's the fine line between both of them for you?
Well, there can be no lawful surveillance without law. So if you think about Finfisher, for example, this is a very broad technology that can even read encrypted emails, as you said. The use of the software is not even legal in Germany right now. So we have courts and we have like a judiciary system, which is not perfect, but it's certainly better than in Bahrain. So you have to think, if this is not legal to use in Germany, how can we export it to Egypt, to Bahrain, to Syria, and to many other countries around the world?
The danger here is that this industry that's growing now, the commercialization of digital surveillance technology, has reached, I think, at least 36 countries across the world, mostly repressive countries. So they're enabling repressive governments to do stuff that they can't do themselves. So they don't have the capacities like the GCHQ or NSA to run their own surveillance programs. They need this technology to do that kind of surveillance. So they're essentially profiting and making hundreds of millions of dollars from selling this technologies. And you see them alongside arms companies in arms exhibitions across the world selling this product. So these are essential tools of repression that are being used, and they're being sold alongside tanks and guns because it's an essential tool to really crack down and to be used for internal to monitor political adversaries, to monitor journalists. And so we've been fighting with RSF and many other NGOs, especially Privacy International, to hold these companies to account because they're breaking export laws in Europe. And so there are legal actions, and they're also breaking OECD guidelines in terms of not carrying out the risk management, not carrying out knowingly exporting these kind of tools to repressive governments. So there's a global campaign now to regulate digital surveillance technology to make sure that it doesn't get into the hands. And last week in the UK Parliament, parliamentarians issued a report actually backing the campaign, saying that this is against European and British law at least. So there's someone that needs to answer for this kind of export and this international global industry in digital surveillance in the private sector.
Okay.
Yeah, one comment to this. I think there is a political movement going on there right now. And there is, I think, at the moment, as absurd as that sounds, the potential for an open and serious debate about these issues is greater than it has ever been before. A German government so far, this was way down their list of interests, you know. At the moment, it's very hard for them to ignore these issues. And it will have to be governments of Western countries who try to uphold some form of human rights record to take initiative here and realize how software being manufactured in their own countries is being used and how close it is to something that is a weapon, and how you have to think about whether you should regulate this kind of product the same way that you regulate the export of weapons.
Do you really think they will do it, or they will take it into that consideration?
Well, I still believe in democracy. This is my answer to this. So as long as we manage to convince the population of the democracies that we live in that this is a problem and this has to be dealt with, and people are being treated unfairly and unjustly because of it, then there should be pressure that leads to results. That's all we can do.
For the right phase. So you're convinced it's not only from the side of the journalists and the activists who have to be taking security and digital safety, it's also from the side of the political. There should be changes in law, otherwise we won't reach a goal for both.
It's a societal issue that is becoming greater every day, and very few people are aware of it so far.
Okay.
And it's everybody's duty to make more people aware of it and start an open public discussion about these issues.
Okay, and is it really an open public discussion now? Because I just want to ask, because maybe they always say when you talk about digital safety, you have nothing to hide on one hand. On the other hand, people are saying, yeah, I'm using Facebook, I'm using WhatsApp, I'm even using the mails, it makes my life easier. And it as a main right that everyone should have this right of this privacy, and they should stop the whole controlling things, even because I read something, what you wrote is Facebook might be sometimes stopping you from getting a visa. No? That's what you wrote. So I was really excited to know, what do you mean? Like if someone is using Facebook, and I have friends, I'm posting that yes, this day I was at a restaurant eating, and I have friends from all over the world, how could this avoid me from getting a visa to a place?
There's a lot of stories being published currently about people trying, for example, to enter the United States who have been stopped then and not actually been let to enter because of something that they sent in an email, a joke that they made at the airport, something that was found in their Facebook account. So this is becoming more real. This used to be the paranoia of a few people who were not really taken seriously, and at the moment we can see how this matters for many people in their daily lives. And this is, before we talked about Finn Fisher, like really heavy surveillance technology that is targeting specific people. And actually, I think I would like to come back to not only describe how very difficult and evil that is, but also maybe what people can do if they want to avoid being targeted by Finn Fisher, because there are some things that people can do. On the other hand, we have something that could be called surveillance technology, but in fact is our daily use of social media, for example, Facebook or something like WhatsApp, which is an extremely broadly used instant messaging service. And WhatsApp is something that requests the access to all of the phone numbers and all of the contacts in your address book that you have. Basically meaning once you agree to using WhatsApp as a communication means, you will hand over all the details and all the private information of all the people in your address book to some server in the United States, which we don't know whether it's cooperating with the NSA and whether all of this data is being kept in some place in Utah by the NSA, meaning we're actually voluntarily doing what Finn Fisher is doing to people like Allah when we use these apps. And I think that is something that needs to be taken into consideration, and specifically by journalists as well, who would like to actually protect the people whose phone numbers they have in their address books.
So it just answers the one question we got from viewers is, why is it so unsecure to use WhatsApp? So I'm going to go to the next question. Maybe I don't know who's going to answer it. It's from the people participating with us. Encryption is not enough. How can we anonymize the metadata of communication? Who is?
Well, getting rid of metadata is really, really hard or almost impossible, I think. So there are some technologies. One is called perfect forward secrecy, where you have like some special kind of encryption technology that is really hard or almost impossible to break, even if you have a full take like the GCHQ has. So this might help you, but if you have communication, I think you almost always have metadata, and that's something you can hardly avoid. So
okay.
you can use Tor, for example, and you can use Tor hidden services, like an email there, and you can make an anonymous email address. But even inside the Tor network, there have been discovered some FBI nodes or CIA nodes that are placed there. So, and then also you have to be very, very careful on what you say and what you write inside an anonymous network. So even if the technology helps your anonymity, if you write your name somewhere, if you log into some service you normally use, you're not anonymous anymore.
Okay. The second question is how being attacked changes my life. What would be changed? And maybe you got attacked, so what changed?
Well, definitely I'm much more conscious of digital security, but I mean, clicking on the wrong link online can lead you to prison. So there are 15 people in Bahrain now who have been sentenced to 1 year imprisonment for insulting the king on Twitter, and they were using anonymous accounts, but there was a mass phishing. We've documented, Bahrain Watch has documented a mass phishing operation in which thousands of accounts were sent phishing links, which looked like YouTube or looked like a photograph, and people clicked on it, revealing their IP address, and then a few days afterwards, the police came knocking on the door. You're running this anonymous account. And you insulted the king on this anonymous account, and now they've been sentenced. One of them is a 15-year-old boy called Ali Shufa. So there is a very direct, dangerous threat which people are not conscious of, and so therefore you need to be much more careful about which links and which if you use an encrypted browser or something that could help. But we've had problems in Bahrain Watch trying to launch educational training programs, because we're talking about the everyday use of social media, which has been essential to the self-expression of the people who have participated in the so-called Arab Spring protests and who are working against the government to introduce democracy and revolutionary change. So yes, it's been a great tool for emancipation, self-expression. And I can't imagine life without, Facebook or social media in terms of what I do. It's become part of our daily life. At the same time, when you give very complicated, advice that the common everyday person cannot understand,
Exactly so.
it becomes. We had to make this balance because we don't want to scare people off. Because then what happens is my only free space is using an anonymous online account. If I have to shut down that, there's no more avenues that exist for you to express yourself. So it's essential that one of the last remaining spaces, of public spaces that people can use in these countries. But how do you use it carefully? And where's that balance? Because giving out very kind of like advice, like don't use the internet. It's basically means like you're suffocating, throttling people even more.
That was my advice. In case that's the impression you got. I'm not saying don't use the internet, but if you do certain things, don't send them via email.
Yeah. But even stuff like I said,
I'd be out of a job otherwise.
Spiegel online.
The internet has been essential in the Arab world. Like Bahrain is very tech-savvy population. Almost over 70% internet penetration rates. Everyone's using Twitter and Facebook all the time, young and old. So it's in the Arab world at least. The internet is a crucial form for the population to express itself because state media is completely controlled. There's no other place. And so digital security awareness in the region is very, very low. And as we've seen from Tunisia to Egypt to Bahrain, the governments now are cracking down on the internet. And there's not enough awareness about that.
If we go to Bahrain and in Saudi and Kuwait, is it the same situation like in Bahrain that even activists and media activists or political activists are being then also hacked and they being surveilled?
Well, the GCC especially, very rich resource countries, it's an ideal market for these digital surveillance companies, and they're purchasing from the UAE to Kuwait. And Bahrain, what we know, they have contracts with these digital surveillance companies. So, they're willing to spend on security equipment and the like. So the GCC really does, and obviously in Egypt as well, after Mubarak fell down and activists got into the Ministry of Interior, they discovered contracts with Finfisher. So I think the market in the Arab world for digital surveillance is huge. It's reaching probably over $1 billion. So I mean, the governments are using this technology. We know that as a fact.
Okay.
2 weeks ago, I spoke to a Lebanese journalist, and she told me that in the last years they always asked friends in Europe or the United States to open email accounts for them in the specific countries that they could then use, because they said all the domestic email providers, they're all being spied upon. And then she said, okay, but now I discovered these are also spied upon, but by the Americans. And I think this shows that the whole discussion is a lot about credibility, of course, about our credibility. Working for a human rights organization, the whole NSA revelations that came out, of course, make our work in authoritarian countries much more difficult, because China and Russia can now say, you see, like you're doing surveillance all the time and on a very big scale, and so it's very important to be able to speak about these topics from the Western perspective, that this cannot happen anymore.
Yeah, we find ourselves losing the moral argument twice because we say, look, this is wrong. You can't have mass digital surveillance in countries like Bahrain, and then they can respond to us saying, well, the UK and the US are also running their own. This is a national security issue. This is our national right. So we can't. We have no one to look up to in terms of saying this is the ideal democratic governments are doing this. So of course, repressive governments are going to do it as well, and in fact, even have more of an argument to do this.
Yep.
Democracy even supplies the technology used by Bahrain.
Exactly. Yeah.
And when you listen exactly the way they had now, the action and reaction of even the democracies in the Western countries are now being or surveying others, and maybe through the spy software they are delivering. From a point of view from your editor, Tactical Tech, what do you plan, or how would you react with such cases? Like, do you sit together and say, okay, now we have this concrete thing, and it's now it's important to know how we're going to react to it?
I think it's of course an essential part of our work to stay up to date with the different things that are happening and the different threats that evolve and the many cases that come up, and that's actually impossible to follow all of these because there's so many different situations.
Yeah.
On the other hand, it's not news really, because it fits very well with something that we've been saying for a while, which is of course it's good to learn and adapt and use as much digital security as you can handle as well. You need to integrate this into your life. You need not to overwhelm yourself with saying, I'm going to stop everything I've been doing and all I do now is become an expert on digital security, because human rights activists, human rights defenders, this is not what they want. This is not what they do. They have a purpose in what they do, and while they're being targeted, same for journalists. And in addition to that, they can handle a certain amount of digital security, but it is not our aim to turn them into security experts. It's not possible. It's not something we want to do. And so the way we deal with this, and what we think is an important approach, is again, and we've said this before, is to look at the context, to look at actually to ask people to first realize what are the threats that they are facing in the situation that they are living in, and knowing that most people, whether in the West or in the North or in the South or in the East, tend to want to believe that they're not being targeted until it happened to them. This happens to journalists in the North as well, thinking, okay, my work is not really tricky, but those people over there, they might be targeted, or those unfortunate people who have individual cases, they have had this happen, but it's not going to happen to me. And I think it's important to everyone to watch out for people in their society, in the threat that they are working with, and imagine what if they were in a similar situation as a person who has been targeted before.
Okay.
So, for example, either looking at how can I avoid something like Finn Fisher, as well as how can I avoid having the NSA read through my Gmail account. Then there's maybe countries who don't cooperate with the USA so well. For them, it would actually be an option that would be much safer than using a local provider, which is certainly being spied upon by their government. So you cannot say there is one size that fits all, but each situation is very different. And the first step into digital security is look at the context and understand that what happens to other people could also happen to you.
Yeah, but in case like someone watching us or joining us from a country, a third country where it's a repressive regime like Bahrain or others, and maybe for them they would be like, if this is happening in Germany or this is happening in Europe, so I can't do anything. I'm depressed. I can't move. Maybe I know everyone can take over control over my information. So what can we tell them? If you have journalists watching us from these countries and they are like, hey, if it's happening in Germany.
Well, first off, there is a number of things that you can do and should do and should inform yourself about. And there's compendiums of things that explain to you how Tor works, how using PGP to encrypt your email works, why you should use open source software, and how you can integrate various types of open source, how you use a Jabber client or XMPP client for chat with an OTR off the record plugin that creates session-wise encrypted chat. All of these things aren't actually that difficult. Mm-hmm. Once you have a sort of a basic, if you have a basic understanding of the English language, you will find a manual that explains to you how this works in a way that it makes you able to use it. At the same time, and I'd be interested to know what Anna recommends for avoiding Finn Fisher. If you believe that you are being targeted by a secret service with the means and ways to infect your computer, then all bets are off. And you have to take it to a completely new level of security. Mm-hmm. But I think for many people, using those basic measures that I just enumerated, and I'm sure guys in the room have other suggestions, will take you quite a long way. That's one thing. The other thing is, these things could be used by many people, many more people. Less than 5% of German internet users use encrypted email.
Exactly.
And why is that? One thing is it's so few people use it, so it's very difficult to use it because most people that you want to send an email to or receive one from will not have the means to encrypt email. So just as a point of taking a stand and saying, look, we disagree with you being able to read our emails at will. If we get a mass movement of people who just as a political statement, not out of fear or to protect themselves, but as a political statement, start to use encryption, that would take us a fairly long way along a road that makes this discussion, turns it into a public debate.
And
Are you suggesting that we deactivate Gmail, Yahoo accounts, and as a political statement, and then move to these encrypted email?
Well, I mean, you can use a Gmail and encrypt email sending via Gmail. You just have to use a desktop-based client and not use the web-based client. As soon as you use a web-based client, everybody can read what you're doing, or they can read what you're doing. You could use a Gmail account with PGP if you use Thunderbird, for example. Sorry if I'm sort of becoming too specific.
no, it's
As a general rule, at the moment, I would say if you are worried about the American Secret Service being interested in what you do, it might be wise to not use an American email service. I mean, that's what we know.
All the tools you just mentioned, you're operating under the assumption that you're actually in control of what you can install on your computer. Many people are not. So if you work at Spiegel Online, I'm sure you have an IT department and you have a computer. And for most people, the computer is pre-configured. They are not administrators, and they cannot just install the PGP on their computer. So I talked to some journalists who want to make secure contacts with certain people, and I said, okay, like install PGP, and I can show you, I can help you with that. And they said, I can't, and I'm not allowed to because the IT won't let me. So having these infrastructures is for many people not possible to just use these tools, which might be more secure.
And what do you think? What will be the risk if some of the journalists says, no, I'm not going to use anything concerning this, and I'm just continue my work? Where might this end?
If journalists pretend there was no problem, which I find difficult to imagine that there's journalists around.
There's everything.
Okay,
but don't take it that serious. They say, come on, it's not a big threat, it's not a big
I think
risk.
there's a lot of people, journalists and non-journalists, who in theory accept that there is a problem. I think there has been a huge shift since last summer. But then the next step, actually like doing something to actively protect their communication, is a huge big step. And while I agree that generally the tools that Christian suggested are good to use, I think it's not actually that easy if you don't have someone who actually shows you which clicks to make and which checkboxes to check. And every now and then you hit a situation where you're not quite sure whether, because the screenshot, the what you see on screen is not the same as a screenshot in the description that you use to install Tor. And then you don't know, am I making a mistake here, or is there a problem in the software? And then it's very difficult to know whether you're actually securely installing something that is going to help you, or whether you're going somewhere else. So it's not that easy, but still should be something people try. And so if there's journalists who say that there's something they don't need to use, then I really hope that they only cover sports, which I'm not like wanting to denounce sports journalists, but I think there is little danger in that for most sports journalists, at least.
If you look at the Olympic Games in Russia, there might be more.
Accepted. I'm taking that back.
Also, sports journalists coming to Bahrain to cover the Formula One.
I'm taking that back. I'm sorry, that
the
was
government
totally
will
my
definitely
fault.
if they're going outside of the
So there is
the track.
danger in any possible type of journalism, accepted, and so... What? Gardening. Oh, like, who's the murderer?
We've got more questions from Scott Ainsley. What should an average tool set for digital activist journalists contain? What's important? Which capabilities?
I think the easy answer I can give to that is to advise using our toolkit, which is called Security in a Box, and you can find a website in many different languages, which is a toolkit that has, I think, the basic stuff that would be advisable for journalists to use.
Okay.
There's a lot of things in there, including the ones that you have mentioned: Tor, OTR for chat, PGP encryption, TrueCrypt for encrypting files, and many others that I cannot all list.
Maybe
Camera on your laptop.
There is the overlap between physical and digital security, which again I said oftentimes when you have a something like FinSpy that activates the camera, then there's the only thing you can do is cover up the camera. If you want to avoid people getting into your phone, you need to make sure that your phone is always with you and not accessible to others. So there's many things that are in the realm of digital security, but actually are quite physical.
And maybe we can use this to mention to the people following us that there's an extra site on the DigiSafe where they can have an overview or how to use this all, because the information you said might be for some people not very relevant. All right, so you can follow it on the website. We have another question to you, Christian. Who carries the most responsibility for protecting the journalist, employer or the journalist? And that's from Brent Goff.
Well, as Hauke said, you know, if you have an employer that doesn't believe that this is necessary and it doesn't provide you with the tools to have protected communication, for example, obviously that's a problem of the employer. Not, you know, you basically have to be subversive within your own organization, and that shouldn't be the case. You know, if you work for a news organization or for a journalistic organization, I think they have the responsibility of providing you with the tools to communicate safely within the boundaries that we've been discussing for the last hour. At the same time, I think right now there are journalists in many organizations that are much more aware of the issues at stake than their employers might be, because this is a fairly new topic, and operational security from 1995 is a completely different thing from 2013. So on that scale, I think it's the duty of every journalist who's aware of these things to go to their employer and say, look, is PGP something that we should have as a basic tool? So it's a two-sided thing.
Okay. We still have around like 8 minutes. I would like to, maybe if we can sum up the discussion today and say, Ala, what's the next step you will do to even protect yourself more, to have more control of what you're doing, and to prevent that no one can attack you?
Well, I mean, I wish I had a silver bullet answer to that question. It's still something I'm waiting to speak to colleagues who are more experts to give us a much more kind of, to be honest, someone like me, when I see manuals, when I see things like that, more than 3 steps, so it's, I feel that the digital security industry or an activist in that area, I haven't been able to myself even, let alone the lay person on the street, really being able to take the precautions, full precautions necessary. It took me a long time to install a VPN. So I had to do my own research to find out what the best VPN is. Whereas I just wanted a quick answer, like, install this, and I couldn't find those steps or that kind of advice. I know it's contextual, but who do we go to get that kind of advice in the region? I would ask actually my colleagues here, and I know tactical tech exactly. is really good, but we're talking about a mass educational program that needs to kind of get to people who are using this on their everyday basis. People like my mother, people like my parents who have to be very basic about this.
I don't have a good answer to that. The toolkit that you're talking about doesn't exist in that way. We're working very hard in improving our toolkits and also in improving the explanations, and we're not the only ones. There are many others who do the same thing, including many translators, because I think it doesn't make sense to have toolkits in a language that people don't speak, because the reluctance that we all have in trying to read through those manuals increases when you have to do this in a language that you don't speak. So translations are extremely important, and there is just so much to know and so much to explain, and then the software updates all the time. So, for example, one thing that we try to do is to give people screenshots so that they know what to expect when they try to install something, but then these things change all the time. So there's a lot of people working very hard on this. Next thing is that there is some good software. As Edward Snowden said, the only thing that you can rely on at this point is installed encryption, strong cryptography. But the usability of these things can be enormously improved. And we're also working with software developers and people who work on usability of things to actually make these things more easy to understand, because like in comparison to 20 years ago, PGP is easy to install, but if you're not used to that, that looks really weird to get used to. And if you don't have someone who actually sits down with you and helps you install it, that is very tricky. So we're working very hard also to together with a lot of groups and again software developers to improve that and to get developers to understand that that they need to develop software looking through the eyes of the people who are going to use it. And I think also many developers understand this, but then the good and the open source software often lacks funding. So at the same time, we're trying to find funds, which there are some, but not enough, again, that help developers to find the time to do these things, which are still necessary. There's a lot of things that don't yet exist in the way we would need them.
Mm-hmm. Hauke, Reporter Without Borders, are you going to focus more on the laws, changing them? Are you going to focus more on the spy softwares to be changed and stopped? What's the next step?
Well, there's a lot of things that need to be done, basically. So I think one important step is to just keep on evangelizing about this kind of solutions and stuff you can do to protect yourself. But of course, this is not a political solution, because you should not be in a situation where you have to protect yourself. This is also what we say with the rule of law. Nobody should have a shotgun at home to protect himself. But this is basically about the legitimacy of the state. So if the state can't protect me and even spies on me, this is not legitimate. So of course you also have to target laws and to fight against the export of surveillance technology, to fight against things like data retention law, which might be reintroduced in Germany quite soon. So this is very important. And I think, and I said that before, you should always be aware of what kind of technology you're using, because code is law. So you can say that technology has implications for yourself, for your society, for other people, and you should just try to think about this and say, okay, what might be the consequences of me using specific tools or not using them?
All right.
I just wanted to add just one quick thing that I should mention is actually local activists and local techies who really understand the context. You need to work at the micro level sometimes. Like having one big silver bullet with it from an international NGO is not going to deal with the specific context. So, for example, my colleague Roth has developed an app on a mobile app called URL Revealer. So if you're worried about a suspicious link, you instantly install it and it will tell you if it's revealing your IP, if it's a genuine link. So that's a specific kind of local solution. My other colleague, Bill Marczak, works day and night to scan servers in the country to see if there's fin fishers being installed anywhere. So there are local solutions, but again, it's not enough to tackle the bigger challenges. But there are movements within the countries that are trying to address their specific security concerns.
Okay. Christian, as a journalist to a journalist, how would you, if you want to say, go ahead.
I think what we're seeing today, what this discussion has made very clear, is that we have two completely different kinds of sets of problems. The journalists working in Western democracies, as a rule, their lives aren't in danger, and as a rule, they're not being tortured to reveal their passwords and so on. So the kind of dangers that we're facing and that our populations are having to deal with are much more abstract. So on the one hand, it's obviously is necessary to supply those tools to the people who need them because they're in mortal danger. At the same time, I think it's necessary to create a much more wider debate about fundamental human rights of not being surveyed, even if you're not in danger, even if nothing is ever going to happen to you because someone collects your metadata. You should still be aware of the fact that this is a problem and make a political stand about it if you agree that this is something that should be dealt with. So two different sets of problems in different parts of the world that are interlinked, obviously.
All right. And a final word, what would you say, like an insider tip for someone as a journalist, maybe from the point of view of your daily life, to someone you say, okay, you don't care a lot about digital safety, but maybe I have 2 tips for you. It might help you a bit.
I think the simplest possible means of communication that's encrypted and as of now, as far as we know,
Yeah.
we always have to say that at the moment, is secure, is really, as I've mentioned, that is Jabber XMPP chat encrypted with an OTR plugin. It's fairly easy to install. You follow a simple set of rules, and once you've done it, and once your communication partner has done the same, you can have sort of real-time conversations that are encrypted and will not be saved. And it's probably better and easier than trying to have an encrypted phone or sending encrypted emails. It's probably the most basic encrypted tool of communication that I personally know.
All right. We come to the end. Thank you very much for being today with us. Thank you, Hauke. Thank you, thank you, Anna, and thank you, Christian. I just would like to, we had a statistic online. We asked how seriously should journalists take the issue of digital safety? And the most answers we got is from 55% were saying journalists have to come to grips with digital security, but that doesn't mean that they have to give all those useful online tools. So maybe if you want to know more about the other answers, you go to the website of DW Akademie and digital safety. And it's good to mention tomorrow the web seminar will be continuing, and Sebastian Mondial will be the guest tomorrow to answer your questions. Thank you again for being here, and see you tomorrow. And keep on chatting and writing at #DigiSafe. Thank you very much. Thank you.